Good afternoon, St. Lucia. Welcome to this press conference to deal with the aftermath of Hurricane Elsa. As you would know, that we gave a report, a preliminary report, very early after Elsa, in which we identified some critical areas that were affected by the hurricane. First, we have the Minister of Agriculture, Ezekiel Joseph, who will give us a briefing on the damage that was incurred and the plan that we have to rebuild our agricultural sector, and also with our fisher folk as well. We also have Minister Leonard Montoute, who heads up equity, to deal with the damage that was sustained in many vulnerable people's homes during the hurricane. And I will also deal with the infrastructure aspect of the hurricane. So I want to say that the damage that was sustained was predominantly in the agricultural sector. We are estimating over $34 million of crop loss that we had. And the other area that was significantly impacted were over 500 persons' homes, I believe, lost their roofs or their homes were damaged. And so the intention is to be able to provide them assistance through the SSDF. The government had been working to reallocate funds within our existing budget to help with some of the expenditures, but we also applied to the economic fund. So I think it's a good time for persons to really understand what the government has done with the economic fund and why it's so important to us. The CIP program, the first couple of years, the monies were going into the consolidated fund. And it's important to know that once it went into the consolidated fund, there was a proper record and accounting of how those monies were used. Now that it's going into a separate fund and it's being managed by a separate board, and there is clear rules as to what we can use the monies for or apply the monies to, it's not everything that government would like to do that the fund can provide assistance to. So one of the first initiatives that we had was the problem that we were having with Windfresh, when Windfresh was collapsing, and funds were lent to the Ministry of or to the Department of Invest in Lucia to assist in salvaging the assets of Windfresh and to keep the market open with Windfresh. And now those monies are being applied to the restructuring of the FTO. The government now had applied to the economic fund for emergency assistance with the fallout of the Hurricane Elsa. Sadly, the thresholds that we achieved, or the hurricane achieved, did not qualify us to get a significant payout from CRIF. We've not gotten the formal letter, but we were certainly advised that we would to only expect about $130,000 US from CRIF. And as you can see in the agricultural sector alone, we suffered over $36 million or $34 million in crop damage. In the assessment by NEMO and by Equity, as I said, almost 500 homes have been impacted, and we know that the cleanup of roadways and drains would have been an unexpected expenditure at this time, as well as the roofs at the CDC buildings. 13 of the buildings were damaged, and we now have to replace them because we're still at the beginning of the hurricane season, and that's the same thing for the agricultural sector. So we have to get back into the ground as quickly as possible. So at this point, I'd like to confirm that we've received about $10 million. $5 million is going to be going into the agricultural sector. $3 million is going into the Ministry of Equity, into SSDF to help support households. And $1 million is going to the CDC repairs of the buildings, and $1 million is going into road repairs and cleaning up and clearing of roadways in the aftermath of the hurricane. So at this point, I'd like to hand the mic over to Minister Ezekiel Joseph. I know he's been busy for the entire week putting this program together. We had an opportunity to meet my farmers in Micoud South yesterday, and I know that your ministry has been meeting with farmers around the island, reassuring them that support was on the way. So today is a very good day, and that we could now assure St. Lucians that their resources are being made available and will be available for disbursement beginning on Monday of the next week.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister, and I want to recognize my colleague, Minister Leonard Spider-Montut. And good evening or good afternoon to all our listeners and viewers. Like the Prime Minister said, the agricultural sector was the sector that was mostly, well, severely impacted by the passage of the hurricane. And based on our assessment, we are recording damages to the tune of between 34 to 46 million EC dollars. Our assessment also revealed that the subsector that got badly affected is the banana industry and, of course, our plantain farmers. I recall when we were on that show on Sunday night, speaking to our St. Lucians and, of course, to persons who followed the program, the Honorable Prime Minister did made a firm commitment that our government would provide support to the agricultural sector, and it was my responsibility. In fact, I was asked a question what type of support that would be given at the time when you were on the show, and I clearly see that I was not in a position at that point in time to be able to give an indication as to the type of support that we were given, because we were still doing our assessment, and of course we had to come up with a package that the subsector is comfortable with, and of course resources being allocated to. I want to say that on Monday that was done. My ministry with my technical staff, we were able to come up with a package where we presented to Cabinet, and like the Prime Minister said, an allocation of 5 million EC dollars has been allocated to the agricultural sector to support everyone or all our farmers that have been affected by the passage of the storm. And I'll just give some broad indication as to the areas that we'll be focusing on as far as the support that we have agreed to give. And of course, like you said, that we are hoping that we can start actually giving that support as come Monday next week. We have agreed to give some support as it pertains to labor, on labor support. So there's some financial support will be given. We're targeting almost 2,487 acres, and farmers will be given support as far as that is concerned to assist them in being able to hire labor to for them to be able to rehabilitate their respective fields. We have also agreed to give support as it pertains to fertilizer inputs. We are going to provide inputs free of charge, one application for fertilizer, and also one application of oil and fungicide for our farmers. Now, we have heard a lot about building resilience, and I'm sure the Prime Minister has been in the forefront advocating that there's need for us to build resilience. And what we realized going around, that most of the farms that were shielded by windbreaks was not severely damaged. It's something we have started as a ministry, and we think that there's a need for us to continue, because the reality is that climate change is here to stay, and we have to start doing things that we believe can reduce on the impact of any strong wind. So we have made an allocation for building resilience to the tune of $47,000, and that will be to provide farmers with planting material, tree crops that they can plant along the boundaries to provide that safety net whenever we have been experiencing heavy winds. Our vegetable farmers got damaged too. Unfortunately, mostly it was the infrastructure and the infrastructure I'm referring to had really got severely damaged were a number of greenhouses. The figures is showing that over 100 greenhouses got affected, and we have agreed that to provide an allocation both to repair the greenhouse and to assist our vegetable farmers who are severely affected. Because the reality is that the technology, the greenhouse technology, is one where our farmers around this time can capitalize on using the greenhouses to cultivate the respective crops that we know can be very difficult during the rainy season. And of course, the rainy season coincides with the demand period for vegetables in St. Lucia. So we think there is a need for us to give support to our vegetable farmers, and we will give support in repairing greenhouses and of course inputs to our farmers. Again, unfortunately, some of our livestock farmers got severely damaged. Well, not they got damaged, but their infrastructure got damaged as far as their buildings, their pens, and in some cases, some of them lost animals. And what we have agreed is to provide an allocation of $300,000 where we shall be providing support to our livestock farmers that experience damage during the passage of the storm. We think it's opportune because, like we all know, we are early in the hurricane season, and whilst we did not realize heavy rainfalls, but whatever we are doing, we think there's need for us to create an environment that we can see the free flow of water. And in that case, we are going to support our farmers, especially those in the low-lying areas and their heavy drainage areas. We are going to support them with drainage assistance. Our CMOS farmers got affected, our fishermen got affected, our fisher folks got affected, and support will be given to them. In closing, the other area we're looking at seriously is the question of assisting those banana farmers who have not been paid for about 8 weeks. And an allocation has been made to pay them at least out of the 8 weeks to pay for 5 weeks. And the other 3 weeks will be paid when we, like you heard the Prime Minister spoke about supporting restructuring the NFTO. So the balance of the outstanding payments will be made after we have restructured the NFTO. And I can say here that even before the storm, we had gotten an allocation of $4.2 million through the support of the Honorable Prime Minister and Ministry of Finance to assist us in restructuring the NFTO. So that, again, is an allocation that will be used during the recovery period for our banana farmers. So I just want to express my appreciation to the Honorable Prime Minister and, of course, the unit and my ministry and my extension staff who have gone out there and be able to do the necessary analysis and assisting us in being able to come up with a package that we are able to give support to our farmers. And I'm really looking forward for the commencement of the support to our farmers come next week. Thank you very much. Done, Mike?
Honorable Prime Minister, colleague minister, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say that my ministry, the Ministry of Equity, Social Justice, Local Government and Empowerment, is responsible in conjunction with the Ministry of Economic Affairs, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport and Civil Aviation in dealing with the aspect of the emergency relief pertaining to damaged homes. We have an estimated 500 homes that suffered damage of one kind or another. Many suffered damage to their roofs, and there were some 50 households or so that were completely damaged. And so an allocation of $3 million has been made available to assist the families that have suffered damages. And we note as well that most of the damage was incurred by lower and middle income households. And so we are pleased to say that, recognizing the need for that support, this $3 million will go toward ensuring that those people get that kind of relief that is needed. The implementing agency for actually conducting the relief work that is necessary will be the St. Lucia Social Development Fund, the SSDF. And I just want to indicate that we arrived at these estimates that we have here based on the reports that we received from Ministry of Housing and from the Ministry of Social Development, or rather Equity, Social Justice, Local Government. And so I am pleased to say that we are going to ensure that this is rolled out as expeditiously as possible, given the fact that we know that some minor repairs have taken place with many of the houses that have lost their roofs. But given the fact that we know that many of the galvanized sheetings were damaged, even those that were replaced still continue to leak, and the victims continue to suffer further damage to their property, to their belongings inside. And so it is important that we roll out this program as quickly as possible. So we are going to start off immediately with providing this assistance that is needed. And if I can just go into a little more detail, the 50 households that I mentioned that were completely damaged will provide assistance to the tune of up to $15,000, which will amount to some $750,000 to do the repairs that is needed. And the estimated 450 households that suffered damage to their roofs will receive between a range of $1,500 to $7,500. And that will work out to be an estimated $2.25 million. And so I ask that people out there who have suffered damage, it's a few days already, just be a little patient. We are rolling out this program as quickly as possible. We understand your plight, we recognize the need for the assistance, and we did all that we could to receive the funding as soon as we can, and we will waste no time in ensuring that we reach you in executing and implementing the relief that is needed on your part. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Spider. I'd like to open up for any questions at this point. You want to bring it up?
Nelson Parliamentary CD. With elections a matter of 17 days away, how quickly are we going to roll out all these services to ensure that it doesn't get caught up in the height of elections and the aftermath of elections?
So the repairs to the CDC buildings has already started. Meetings with the farmers and evaluations by the extension officers have already started. In fact, farmers have been encouraged to meet with their extension officers. As I indicated, the monies will be available as of Monday. So the persons whose homes have already been identified, that will start immediately.
And on the topic of climate resilience and the need for climate resilience, infrastructure, farms, where are we, or what is the government's line of priority in terms of that? I know on Sunday you mentioned it's hard to get international funding from the bigger countries, but how determined are we to put that in place?
Well, I think that the evidence is there. All the new roads that you're seeing going up are being built with proper drains and sidewalks. Wherever we can put utility wires underground, that we're doing so. Where we're expanding piping, the amount of monies that we have spent on drains. So we had the DVRP program. When we came into government, there was $67 million US still left in that program. We've committed all of those funds, and so if you go around the communities, you'll see the amount of drains that have been built to help with that situation. We have tripled the amount of monies that we've been spending on desilting. We went from $1.5 million to just under $4.5 million an annual basis. The Minister of Agriculture has indicated that some of the longer term issues are really on coastal erosion, and we're attempting to do that. So the desilting of river mouths, taking channels of water, so instead of hitting straight onto the ocean, that we're taking sides. So if you look at the Denry village as an example, is a very good example of retraining the river, the work that's taken place in the cul-de-sac area in terms of raising the height of the bridge. The new schools that we're building all have been built to withstand up to Hurricane 5 hurricanes. 14 healthcare centers have been made to hurricane proof, meaning that they have their own independent generators, they have their own water supplies, special refrigeration. So again, if a community is cut off, that community, that healthcare center can act independently to the health system that we have. The big one really the minister made reference to in agriculture is the tree cropping program. The idea of getting persons to diversify their land and not just have bananas, but also have other forms of vegetation, and including in that selection tree crops. So whether it be cocoa trees, whether it be mango trees, whether it be avocado trees, because as he indicated, we're seeing early signs that that is working. Now, this was a Hurricane 1, so we had winds up to 75 miles an hour. I'm not so sure that tree cropping would be that resilient past Hurricane 2 or Hurricane 3. So we've been lucky, if we will all notice, that the hurricanes that we've had in the last 10 years have not been as strong as wind as this one. Most of the time, it has been from rain, and that's really been the biggest focus. The West Coast Road, as an example, is really being built with resilience in mind. And that's why it's taken as long as it has. Slope stabilization, proper drains, utility wires underground, proper laybys, all of these things are being built into the road network to make it much more resilient to our terrain, and with the understanding that we're getting more and more hurricanes coming.
Okay. And just to provide some more detail on the point of funding, international climate funding, if you can speak to that, please.
Sure. The difficulty is you run a very fine line, because the indicators that the global international agencies use to determine your solvency, your capability, is debt to GDP, and also per capita GDP. These are two things that are used on a regular basis. St. Lucia still is not determined to be a high-level income country. We're a middle income country, and we still have access to some concessional financing. But because of your debt to GDP, you're restricted on how much you can borrow. So even though it may be on a very concessional terms, it can affect your credit rating if you have too high of a debt to GDP number. What we've been working with the development agencies with is to reclassify small island developing states. St. Lucia is one of the 43 small island developing states around the world, using what we called a different indicator, one that is based on vulnerability. So it takes into other things into consideration. So we saw in the Bahamas, even though they have a very high per capita GDP, they still have not recovered from the hurricane in 2019. And that's, because it's a lot of money to make that happen. So we would like the international agencies to either lend us money, or more importantly, to give us grant funds, because climate change is not our fault, to put in plain English. Even if we were to become net neutral, it's not going to change our situation. It requires America, Canada, Europe, China to address these situations. And so we believe that a certain amount of money should be made available to us to build this resilience in our own countries. It's an ongoing battle. Sadly, when the international economic order was put in place, which was after World War II, small island states like St. Lucia didn't exist. And so we weren't contemplated in the formulas that they have. But I can say to you that we're speaking as one voice. There is the COP meeting coming up in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and now having Kerry, the former Secretary of State of the United States, as well as Prime Minister Trudeau, and the Commonwealth Secretariat, working with us to get this message across. The World Economic Forum, as you know, St. Lucia was one of the 2 countries in the world that was included to help design the new World Economic Order as it pertains to climate change. These papers are going to be presented, and I'm very hopeful that persons will understand our plight. So even before COVID came, it was a difficult situation. COVID only exacerbated the situation, and I would say this to you, the work that we did leading up to COVID on climate change really helped make the case very fast. Because if you see, the World Bank and the IMF and CDB all responded in record time in providing resources to us to deal with COVID. So I'm encouraged, and I think that we are arguing this not from a begging perspective, but certainly reminding the world that if you limit the economic output of these countries, you're minimizing the opportunities for your own countries.
Okay. Yeah.
something in Creole. I know some of them have Creole news here, especially Tongue farmers. Just for those who are doing Creole news, I'm sure you want something in Creole. Ok, am vle di dat jodi a nou isi a, epi Honorable Prime Minister, epi Honorable Leonard, mon tout pou pale pou di ki kal sipo, nou kay bay se moun ki ven afekte apwe hurricane nan nou just experience. Mon chanje le Prime Minister epi mwen te le show dimanche, nou di nou kay vi oti media pou di yo ki kote nou kay bay sipo, pi ki kal de sipo nou kay bay. Et puis aujourd'hui, Moussa dit that this is a recommendation from a ministry cabinet d'accord pour bailler support pour $5 millions pour agricole. Et puis vite, on a dit que c'est différent côté à nous bailler support pour farmers, les pêcheurs et puis pour small farmers aussi. Et puis farmers qui sont affectés, qui ont nourrir les animaux. Nous bailler support pour financial support pour farmers qui pour aider yo nettoyer et puis replanter jardin yo. Nous kay bay sipo et puis sel, nous kay bay sipo et puis huile et puis fongicide pour ça faire figue là. Farmers qui expérience difficultés et puis greenhouse, nous kay also bay sipo pour ces farmers ça pour établir greenhouse yo. Aussi farmers qui can nourrir les animaux qui sont affectés, qui les animaux à croiser, et puis des farmers qui des animaux morts. Le ministère a fait support pour ces farmers pour établir les animaux. Et puis aussi, nous avons fait support pour manger et puis jeunes poules. Nous avons nécessaire pour nous nettoyer ces major canals là, pas canal en les femmes, mais ces major canals là, et puis en allocation of la HAB mettre en place pour assister pour nettoyer ces major waterways. Aussi, ces small farmers là qui viennent affecter, puis ces pêcheurs qui viennent affecter, through the département of the pêche, nous avons fait support pour ces gens là. Valuable farmers aussi qui a un support et puis inputs et puis nous avons aussi by financial support pour vegetable farmers. Allocation now $5 millions nous mettons ensemble. Nous a été nécessaire pour payer les farmers fig là at least because pour actuellement NFT car deux farmers ça nous a 8 semaines yo pour qu'on payer. So c'est attention pour assister ces farmers ça, but allocation ça nous avons $5 millions. Nous avons payé farmers 5 semaines et puis l'autre 3 semaines là nous restructure NFTO content Prime Minister dit nous avons fait allocation of nous avons un loan of $4.2 million avant cyclone et puis là ça est still là pour assister farmers. Now nous regardons that gouvernement qui prend temps pour assister farmers fig et puis farmers fig de Chaila. C'est pas faute gouvernement that farmers fig de Chaila. I mean là nous entrer comme gouvernement nous joignent problème là. Et puis c'est mon qui a parlé actuellement à la radio, à la télévision, c'est yo qui met des problèmes là. Et puis nous avons travaillé manière ça travaille joindre ressources pour ranger problème là. So moi je dis that et puis c'est pour Honorable Prime Minister et puis cabinet nous avons un loan of $4.2 million. But nous pour mettre un legal entity là avant banque là ça bail là ça because all NFT board là pas là encore. So le montant monde qui parler et puis parler about gouvernement pourquoi bail support. Raison pour bail support is because tant yo prend pour ba nous information, tant yo prend pour dire nous yo d'accord et puis ça consultant là fait il était pour over 4 mois. 4 mois. So, moi, je veux dire, farmers, nous avons là, nous avons try mettre en place legal entity, ça c'est important. Et puis, as soon as nous joignons legal entity à registrer, nous avons continuer à restructure NFT, et puis pour nous ça continuer qu'à vendre figue. So, notwithstanding this, nous still need $500,000 là pour payer ces farmers là, Premier ministre là d'accord, pour mettre l'argent là pour payer ces farmers là, et puis ces farmers là quand payer si maintenant qu'à venir. So, je veux dire merci à pile, et puis je veux dire farmers on continue to travailler ensemble, because unfortunately, ça fait cyclone dans ces bails qui là pour a reality, et puis plus nous travaillons ensemble, plus nous can try overcome ces challenges là. So, je veux dire merci à pile, on behalf of Ministry, merci pour Prime Minister, et puis tout cabinet collègue qui était nécessaire pour mettre allocations là pour assister toutes les farmers qui jouent endommagés during Hurricane Elsa. Merci à pile.
Ok, moi, je voulais expliquer aussi l'assistance que nous avons tiré pour les gens qui jouent dommage pour Caillou après le cyclone Elsa passé, vendredi passé. Comme je dis plus bonheur, le gouvernement a mis à ce côté $3 millions pour assister les gens qui ont Caillou dommagé en cyclone. $3 millions ça là, l'année a pris pour 50 cailles, nous estimons, qui trouvé dommagé totalement. Avec ces gens là, nous avons aidé, nous avons même qui $15,000 pour assister pour rebâtir caillou. Bon, l'autre 50, l'autre 450 c'est gens qui ont caillou dommagé. Plusieurs ces gens c'est fait taille caillou là qui dommagé. Nous avons tiré aussi assistance pour ces gens là. Nous avons $1,500 jusqu'à $7,500. Avec ça qui est venu sous multiplier ça par 450, on dit en average nous avons $5,000 pour chaque caille, ça qui est venu $2,250,000. So, c'est comme ça nous avons dépensé $3 millions pour bailler mon assistance parce que nous réalisons la majorité de ces gens qui ont caillou dommagé, c'est malheureux. Les gens qui sont pauvres, avec nous voulons faire assurer nous pour tirer l'assistance là, ils ont besoin. Avec nous, promettre nous avons bailler l'assistance là, et nous avons faire ça nous paie pour bailler l'assistance là plus vite que possible. So, pour qu'il membre SSDF qui a implémenté le programme ça là, qui est venu visiter ou divers gens qui sont venus demander des questions, avec nous avons fait un assessment dans ce côté là, avec à présent nous parlons pour pour faire assurer nous assister au point caillou pour monde qui a été la caille voisinage la caille famille ça vient caillou même monde qui fait un petit rangement pour vivre en caillou nous savent en chaque ces caille ça la couler toujours nous va au matériau qui neuf qui bon pour ça régler situation ça là pour tout le monde vivre encore dans une situation qui est normale. So moi je veux remercier le Premier ministre là, moi je veux remercier les autres membres du cabinet là pour ça pour tirer l'argent ça là travaille tellement vite pour faire l'argent ça là avaler vite qu'on nous a fait avec moi KSP côté officiel qui travaille plus vite que possible pour faire assurer nous baou anti relâchement relâchement pardon anti relief soulagement c'est ça c'est moi mon gars pour nous baou anti soulagement pour faire assurer bagaille vie normal pour merci un peu.
Okay, I want to thank everyone. I want to remind everyone that, again, it's unfortunate what happened with the Hurricane Elsa. I'm very happy that we can move as quickly as we did to do the assessments. I want to thank the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Equity. I also want to thank NEMO for assisting in the assessment that was conducted. I want to thank the Ministry of Finance, in particular the Director of Finance, who herself is having some personal challenges with the death of her brother, and I just want to thank her and her staff for moving as expeditious as they are to make these monies available at this very crucial time. This government will continue to build resilience in this country to benefit the people of this country, and that is down to the most vulnerable persons. And our 5 to 5 program is about building resilience in everyone. The idea of having a healthcare insurance for every single person, the idea of having unemployment benefits for persons who are working and lose their jobs so that they know that they can continue to get a steady income, to the vulnerable in our society who've been struggling to survive. And certainly COVID and hurricanes expose that vulnerability. And so the idea is that they don't have to be begging. You know, the Ministry of Equity is being strengthened. The reason why local government is within the Ministry of Equity is so that those services can be provided at that grassroots level. Even just doing this process, you know, Spider, constituents of mine who were not getting the money because there was a problem on the vulnerability list, we're having to travel up to Castries. Versus if we have a stronger local government presence and efficiency, persons can stay in their constituency to be able to get these benefits. The Ministry of Agriculture has been working with us. The idea of purchasing fish and also purchasing vegetables, which came into existence during the COVID period. This is how we're going to support our more vulnerable. So the school feeding program and providing vouchers to the more vulnerable in our society, single parents and elderly who are difficulty in providing for themselves. The monies that we're using to purchase food items will be going to them as well. So the school feeding programs and to our social programs, but at the same time benefiting fisherfolk and benefiting the farmers and benefiting the poultry and livestock producers, because that's who we're going to be buying this stuff from. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. And I really want to thank the Ministry of Agriculture for their support in those programs. So again, good day, thank you, and I want hopefully everybody to have a very safe weekend and continue to adhere to the protocols, and every opportunity that you have to become vaccinated, please do so. I thank you.